The city of Nancher had a signature heartbeat, one that glowed in neon, hummed through crowded alleyways, and whispered secrets through the glass windows of speeding taxis. It was a city where dreams rose like skyscrapers and collapsed just as easily. But on one particular night, the city felt different. The air vibrated with something electric, something fragile, something waiting. Xiao Zhan stepped out of the theater doors and into the pale glow of street lamps, pulling his scarf closer as the evening breeze curled around him. He had just finished performing in his new stage play, and usually, the energy of the crowd carried him for hours afterward. But tonight he felt a tug in his chest, an emptiness he couldn't ignore. Behind him, the backstage crew was still bustling, but he stood alone on the steps, staring into the night as if searching for something hidden in the shadows. Then the familiar sound of a motorcycle engine broke the silence. Sharp, smooth, unmistakable. A black bike slid to a stop at the curb, and the rider pulled off his helmet with a flick that only one person could make look dramatic unintentionally. Yibo. His expression was unreadable, but his eyes, sharp, observant, restless, were locked onto Xiao Zhan like the two were already in the middle of a conversation neither of them had spoken aloud. "You're late," Xiao Zhan said, though he wasn't sure if he meant it as a joke or something deeper. Yibo smirked, the corner of his mouth lifting just slightly. "You ended early." And just like that, the space between them shifted. Something cracked open. Something small, something dangerous, something beautifully inevitable. They hadn't seen each other in a year. Not since their fallout. Not since pride outweighed pain. Not since both walked away believing the other should have said something first. But tonight, when the city lights flickered like tiny universes waking up, fate decided it was time. The wind swept around them, letting only the truth settle. Xiao Zhan looked at Yibo, really looked at him. Same confidence, same stillness, same quiet fire. But there was something new too, a softness hidden but there. "Why are you here?" Xiao Zhan asked, his voice lower than he intended. Yibo didn't answer immediately. He simply held out an extra helmet, the black surface reflecting the city lights. "Because," he said, "when the lights come in, you should never be alone." Xiao Zhan's breath caught. Not because of the words themselves, but because Yibo said them without hesitation, like he had rehearsed them on every ride, every night, every lonely hour over the past year. He hesitated for a moment, but only a moment. He took the helmet. The night shifted again. They rode through the glowing veins of the city, the neon reflections flashing across the curves of the bike like shooting stars. Xiao Zhan held onto Yibo, unsure if it was for balance or because he couldn't stop himself. The wind whipped around them, blasting away their silence, their fears, their memories of that night when everything fell apart. The bike stopped outside an abandoned old cinema, the kind that held echoes of stories in its cracked paint and rusted signs. Yibo parked the bike, glancing up at the faded marquee. "This place is still open," Xiao Zhan whispered. "Only for us," Yibo replied. He pushed the door, and it creaked open like an invitation to the past. Inside, the air smelled like dust, worn velvet, and old dreams. The single projector flickered on as if knowing exactly what to do. The screen lit up with a soft glow, showing nothing yet everything. Xiao Zhan turned to Yibo again. "You remembered." "How could I forget?" Yibo said softly. "This is where we first realized we were more than colleagues." The memories hit like the first spark of a flame. A late-night rehearsal. A broken projector. A shared blanket in freezing air. A moment too intimate to be accidental. A glance too long to be innocent. Everything they had run from was right there in that space. Alive, waiting, impossible to ignore. Xiao Zhan sat in the middle row, and Yibo sat beside him. But the distance between them felt charged, like the universe itself was holding its breath. "You disappeared," Xiao Zhan finally said, unable to swallow it any longer. "You pushed me away," Yibo shot back. "You didn't fight. You didn't ask me to stay." The frustration cracked between them, but neither looked away. Then the film projector sputtered and cast a dim beam of light across the room, dust particles swirling like tiny constellations. The glow fell across Yibo's face, softening the sharpness, exposing the vulnerability beneath. "Zhan," Yibo murmured, his voice suddenly breaking. "I thought leaving was what you wanted." Xiao Zhan's heart clenched, the truth stinging deeply. "I wanted you to choose me." Yibo inhaled sharply. "I did. Every day. Even after we stopped speaking." Silence flooded the room, heavy, raw, honest. Then Yibo did something he had never done before. He reached out and took Xiao Zhan's hand. Not forcefully, not hesitantly, just truthfully. The warmth of his palm carried 1,000 unsaid apologies, 1,000 memories, 1,000 promises waiting. Xiao Zhan didn't pull away. The old projector flickered again, and suddenly the damaged film sprang to life. Not with an old movie, but with a video montage Yibo had edited himself. Clips of their early rehearsals. Their behind-the-scenes laughter. Their most iconic scenes together. Moments fans never saw. Moments they themselves had forgotten, but their hearts had not. Xiao Zhan's breath trembled. "You kept all these." Yibo swallowed. "I kept everything." The scenes washed over them like a tide. Nostalgia, longing, regret, hope all tangled together. Then the final clip appeared. A candid video of Xiao Zhan laughing, really laughing, during a late-night rehearsal. The lights had flickered unexpectedly, and he had looked up with a glow that made the whole room brighter. Over the clip, Yibo's voice quietly spoke a line he recorded. "When the lights come in, you become the only thing I want to see." Xiao Zhan froze. Yibo didn't break eye contact. The room felt too small to contain the gravity of that confession. Xiao Zhan's voice cracked. Why didn't you tell me this before?" Yibo leaned closer, not touching, but close enough that Xiao Zhan could feel the warmth radiating from him. "Because I thought you'd say I was too late," Yibo whispered. "But I'm here now. And I'm not leaving again unless you tell me to." The air felt electric again, sparking, humming, shifting. This time, Xiao Zhan didn't hesitate. He leaned in, his forehead touching Yibo's, breath mingling like a promise sealed by fate. "You're not too late," he said. "You came when the lights came in." Outside, the city glowed brighter, as if celebrating the moment. Inside, the projector flickered one final time before fading, leaving them in the warm hush of darkness. But this time, neither was afraid of what they couldn't see. Because they weren't alone anymore. When they stepped out of the cinema, dawn was beginning to creep over the horizon, painting the sky with pale gold. The city hadn't woken up yet, but somehow, Xiao Zhan and Wang Yibo felt like they had. The world felt new. The silence between them was no longer empty. It was full. Full of possibility. Full of meanings they didn't have to say out loud anymore. As Xiao Zhan and Wang Yibo stepped back out onto the street after the projector dimmed into silence, the wind shifted with a softness that felt almost supernatural. The night, once cold and distant, had warmed around them, like the world itself sensed the fragile reconnection happening between two souls who should have never drifted apart. But the moment they reached the sidewalk, Xiao Zhan stopped walking. Something inside him tugged sharply, an emotion he had buried since the day they said their last words a year ago. "Yibo," he said softly. Wang Yibo turned, helmet in hand, brows slightly furrowing with concern. "What is it?" Xiao Zhan didn't answer immediately. Instead, he took a slow step forward, letting the street lamp bathe his face in a warm glow. His eyes held a storm, raw, unfiltered, exposing everything he had held back for too long. "That video you played," Xiao Zhan began. "You didn't just keep memories. You kept moments I didn't even know you noticed." Yibo exhaled, long and unsteady. "I noticed everything, Zhan." The air thickened. Xiao Zhan took a breath, gathering the courage he used to pride himself on having. "But why now? Why come tonight? Why bring me here?" The motorcycle engine ticked softly as it cooled, like a heartbeat in the background. Yibo stepped closer until the warm night air seemed to merge around them. "Because this place, this street, that cinema. The night we stayed until sunrise 3 years ago. I remember, Xiao Zhan whispered. You laughed so hard the lights shook, Yibo said, smiling faintly. And I thought, if I ever lost you, I'd come back here to find you again. Xiao Zhan's lips parted, stunned. You really thought that? I lived by it, Yibo answered, voice low and steady. But coming back meant facing what I ran from. And I wasn't strong enough then. The confession hit Xiao Zhan deep, too deep. It made the unspoken regrets between them glow painfully bright. He took another step forward until they stood almost chest to chest. You're strong enough now, Xiao Zhan said. Yibo's gaze softened, and something vulnerable flickered in his eyes. Only because you're standing here. The street around them blurred. Everything else, noise, lights, the distant passing of cars, felt muted compared to the invisible tether pulling them closer. Then a gust of wind swept past, scattering dried leaves across the pavement. The street lamp above them flickered, dimmed, then brightened, almost like the universe was adjusting the spotlight on them. Yibo glanced up. Even the lights are dramatic tonight. Xiao Zhan huffed a quiet laugh, the tension easing just a little. Maybe they missed you too. Did you? Yibo asked softly. That one question shattered everything inside Xiao Zhan. He swallowed, heart pounding. Yibo. Every time the lights went out during rehearsals, every time the stage dimmed, every time I sat alone in the dressing room, yes. I did. Silence crashed over them, heavy but warm. Yibo closed his eyes briefly, as if steadying himself. I thought you didn't need me anymore. And I thought you didn't want me anymore. Their truths collided, messy, painful, necessary. Then, before either could speak again, a sudden flash of car lights washed over them. The street lamp flickered once more, scattering a cascade of golden reflections across the pavement. Xiao Zhan's scarf fluttered behind him like a ribbon caught in a soft breeze. Yibo reached out instinctively, catching the edge of it to keep it from slipping. But when his fingers brushed the fabric, they brushed Xiao Zhan too. That touch, simple, delicate, felt like fire. Xiao Zhan's breath hitched. Yibo. Wang Yibo didn't pull away. He stepped closer, closing the last inch between them. His voice dropped to a whisper only Xiao Zhan could hear. When I touched you just now, everything came back. Every reason I tried to forget. Every reason I failed. Xiao Zhan felt his pulse tremble. What reason was the hardest to forget? Yibo's eyes lifted. Intense, sincere, devastatingly gentle. You, he said simply. Always you. The world froze. The wind stilled. Even the city seemed to pause, waiting. Xiao Zhan felt something in him collapse and rebuild at the same time. The weight of a year of silence dissolved in the warm glow of that moment. You should have told me sooner, he whispered, though there was no anger left, only aching honesty. Yibo nodded slowly. I know. But I'm telling you now. Then he held out his hand, not shaking, not hesitant but steady. A promise carved into the shape of a gesture. Come with me, Yibo said. There's something else I want to show you tonight. Xiao Zhan stared at the hand, then at Yibo, then at the empty street around them, lit softly like a stage set just for them. Finally he took Yibo's hand. Warmth sparked instantly. Alive, electric, hopeful. Yibo's eyes softened. Ready? Xiao Zhan nodded. Wherever you're going, yes. They walked toward the motorcycle again, hand in hand. The engine purred to life as Yibo climbed on, sliding forward to make space. Xiao Zhan wrapped his arms around him, holding tighter this time, not for balance, but because the fear of losing him again felt unbearable. Hold on, Yibo murmured. I will, Xiao Zhan whispered into his shoulder. As long as you don't let go. Yibo's hand brushed over Xiao Zhan's briefly, just a quick reassurance, but powerful enough to warm him to the core. Never again, he said. Then the motorcycle launched forward, carrying them into the glowing veins of the city. Neon lights streaked past like falling stars. Wind roared around them. The world blurred, but the person in front of Xiao Zhan was solid, real, irreplaceable. As they raced through an underpass, The lights above flickered in rhythmic patterns, creating a tunnel of golden flashes. Xiao Zhan tightened his grip, leaning closer against Yibo's back. And Yibo, without looking, reached behind just enough to touch Xiao Zhan's arm. A silent "I'm here." The night deepened, the city opened, and the story of their fractured past began to stitch itself together with every turn the bike made. Because sometimes, healing doesn't start with words. It starts when the lights come in. And two people finally stop running from the glow.